I'm doing a book review, and the book I want to review is The Walking Dead, The Road to Woodbury by Robert Kirkman and J. Bonansinga. Now, this was published in 2012, and it's a sequel to Robert Kirkman and J. Bonansinga's other book, The Walking Dead, Rise of the Governor, which was a prequel to the Walking Dead comic book series by Robert Kirkman. Now, Rise of the Governor explained the origins of the character of the Governor, who is a pretty major character in the comic book series and in the TV show, but this book, Road to Woodbury, actually explains the origins of the character of Lilly, who is a character from the comics, and there is a character based on her in the show. However, in the show, they do alter a lot of characteristics of her. Now, in case you're unfamiliar with The Walking Dead is set in a post-apocalyptic world where dead bodies have returned to life as zombies, and zombies have pretty much taken over the entire world. Now, the story for this book follows a young woman named Lilly, who, in the beginning of the book, is with this group of survivors trying to survive in this world being overrun by zombies, and one thing leads to another, which I won't give away, but eventually her and a few other characters have to leave this group of survivors, and they eventually come to a small town called Woodbury, which is this small town surrounded by these walls to keep the zombies out. So, upon coming to Woodbury, the characters discover that all the things in Woodbury are essentially run by a man who calls himself Philip Blake, and in the book he ends up going by the nickname the Governor, and they eventually find out that the Governor is a complete psychopath, and there's a lot of corruption within the town of Woodbury, and eventually Lilly and a few of the other residents of Woodbury try to stage a rebellion against the Governor, and that's all I want to say about the plot of the book. Now, The Road to Woodbury, I thought was a pretty good follow-up to Rise of the Governor. However, I will say I enjoyed Rise of the Governor a lot more. Now, the one thing that was cool about Rise of the Governor is, even though it was a prequel to the Walking Dead comic book series, it did very much work as a standalone book. Like, you could have easily read that book without having to read the comic books. This book, there are a lot of references to Rise of the Governor, so I personally recommend reading Rise of the Governor before you read this book. That being said, you can easily read this and Rise of the Governor without having to be familiar with the comic book series, although I still recommend reading the comic book series if you haven't read them, because it is a really good series. But all that being said, there are some things in this book that, unless you've read the comics, you probably wouldn't get. Like, it's not that you wouldn't get them, but there are certain, like, dare I say, Easter eggs in a way in this book that only fans of the comics would really get. Like, a lot of the characters in this book are also characters in the comic books as well. Not just Lilly and not just the Governor, but there are other characters in this book who also showed up in the comics, but the book does primarily focus on Lilly and the Governor. But yeah, I would definitely recommend reading The Road to Woodbury. I personally recommend Rise of the Governor more, but The Road to Woodbury is definitely a decent sequel, so I would recommend it. And I would definitely recommend it if you are a fan of the comic book series. But yeah, that's my review on The Walking Dead, The Road to Woodbury by Robert Kirkman and J. Bonansinga, and bye.